Hey everyone, it's Pastor George back to give current events eternal perspective. I love being right. I love that moment when someone says something that I know is wrong and then time, experience, or a quick Google search proves me right. I mean, it just feels good. You know what I'm talking about. And because we're so humble, right, we fight the urge to say, I told you so, even though we know we did. Now, this is human nature, isn't it? The need to feel validated, to proving our ideas, our knowledge, and our experience that they have worth, and therefore that we have worth. But it's an exhausting way to live. The need to always be right fuels arguments and wars and online social media confrontations. It's the catalyst of divorce, debate, and division. And backing down from the fight is pretty much the same as surrender and admission of being wrong. But what if we didn't live that way? What if when we came face to face with conflict and disagreement, we didn't get up in its face, but instead chose to stand down? Now, I realize that this isn't the advice that a lot of people give, but sometimes taking a step back, even giving up a little ground, is the first real step to victory. Why? Because a little humility goes a really long way. Now, stopping long enough to check our attitude, our facts, and our presuppositions gives us a chance to live in truth and respond in grace and love. See, people don't want to be wrong, and they certainly don't want to be wrong publicly, so we put up our hands and we dig in our heels and we double down on our opinion. But if we're willing to step back, to take stock, and to shift our attitude towards the truth, even if we realize that we were standing in it the whole time, well, then we're no longer ruled by pride, but by perspective that has been shaped by honesty and humility. Now, this attitude may not be how the world works, but it's certainly the attitude that Jesus had. And the book of Philippians shows us that you must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God and died a criminal's death on a cross. When Jesus stood before Pilate, when the leading priests and the elders, they made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent. Don't you hear all these charges that they are bringing against you? Pilate demanded. But Jesus made no response to any of the charges, much to the governor's surprise. So if Jesus, who is truth, chose to remain silent in the face of false accusations and attacks on his character, if he stood down when the armies of heaven were at his command, then don't you think that we can do the same? Because we are not always right. We do not always have the full story or complete perspective. So taking an attitude of humility, like Jesus, we give the truth the opportunity to run its course and be proven right. And don't you think that facing death, you'd want to argue and prove your case? Now, if Jesus didn't do that, then the likelihood that you need to die on the hill of whatever your issue is, well, it's pretty slim. And don't think that I'm saying we shouldn't contend for the faith. The Bible is very clear that we should. But too often we try and defend and argue things that aren't gospel issues, and we spend more energy on those things than we do proclaiming the gospel. And we set ourselves up for an awkward conversation if it turns out that we were way off to begin with. Jesus gives us a perfect example of this in Luke's gospel. When Jesus noticed that all those who had come to the dinner were trying to sit in the seats of honor near the head of the table, he gave them this advice. When you are invited to a wedding feast, don't sit in the seat of honor. Well, what if someone who is more distinguished than you has also been invited? Well, then the host will come and say, "Give this person your seat." Then you will be embarrassed and you'll have to take whatever seat is left at the foot of the table. Instead, take the lowest place at the foot of the table. Then when your host sees you, he will come and say, friend, we have a better place for you." And then you will be honored in front of all the other guests. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Well, so what does all of this mean? It means don't try to win every argument. Don't try to be right at the expense of being kind. The truth doesn't need you to prove it. It simply needs you to live by it, because while a lie may have speed, truth has endurance. And let's be honest, if you know you're right and that you live by that truth, won't the truth of your claims become apparent to others in the long run? Will you need to say, "I told you so"? Or will your life do the talking for you? Because in the end, God will give you the recognition that you desire. Or, as James said, humble yourselves before the Lord and He will lift you up in honor. So, the next time you're ready to dig in your heels and fight, remember that the battle belongs to the Lord. And if we're not careful, we may just be getting in the way. So consider standing down so that God and the truth will help you to stand out. God bless. We'll see you next time.